For those who are unaware, American daytime television is absolutely dominated by crappy police and courtroom dramas, and I'm sorry to all the Tom Selleck fans out there. I know he's got a cracking stash, but Blue Bloods sucks.
Well, I'll be damned.
But there is one courtroom drama that's really interesting, the trial of the murderers of Ramses III, the details of which we know about because a papyrus describing the trial has survived over 3,000 years, and it's absolutely fascinating, and it gives us that window into Egyptian politics and law and order. It's interesting. Ramses III was not Ramses the Great, the big statue guy. Ramses III ruled about 50 years after him, but he deserves to be famous in his own right because he ruled during an incredibly chaotic period in global history, the Bronze Age collapse. And he is that famous pharaoh who managed to defeat the Sea People and prevent Egyptian civilization from collapsing. All this war and the collapse of the global economic order, though, it did create a toll on the Egyptian kingdom. And Ramses III's tomb builders in the Valley of the Kings, they actually went on strike for 20 days because they hadn't been paid. What an interesting parallel to our current time here in America, #Ramses shutdown. Nevertheless, despite all of this, he ruled for 31 years, an exceptionally long period of time. And like all Egyptian monarchs that ruled for so long, he had a bunch of wives and a bunch of kids. And it was a rivalry between a wife and a child that led to his ultimate downfall and his murder. A queen of his called Ti, I'm not exactly sure how to say it, she conspired with the harem and the court officials to kill Ramses III and place her son Pentawere on the throne rather than the future Ramses IV. Egyptologists were unsure how and when exactly Ramses died. We know he was assassinated because we have this court transcript, but it's kind of unsure when exactly he died. The transcript refers to him as the great god, but also says that he started the court. So the Egyptologists were basically thinking perhaps he was poisoned, the plan was foiled, and he lived long enough to start this trial. However, modern scientific evidence disputes that. Modern CT scans show that he had a really horrific neck wound, 7 centimeters wide, underneath this huge bandage that had been placed around his neck. This cut went right down to the vertebrae. It severed all the organs in his neck, all the major arteries. Clearly a fatal injury. Some people have suggested that it was the embalming process that caused this wound, but that's very unlikely. There was actually a healing amulet placed inside the wound, which was revealed by the CT scan. And as well as that, he would be the only mummy that we know of that had this sort of wound on their neck. Typically, that was not part of the embalming process. So that's really not likely, considering the fact we know there was an assassination attempt on his life. This must be the wounds that killed him. As for what the papyrus itself says, it's not a court transcript in the modern sense, but it does provide us a huge amount of detail. We know who the 12 judges were in the court, such as the overseer of the treasury, Montem Toe, great name, and the standard bearer of the infantry, Hori. We know that the pharaoh was really keen to show that justice, or ma'at, was being done and that he was impartial. This wasn't just his revenge, because the court transcript starts by stating,
"Take heed. Have a care lest you allow that somebody to be punished wrongfully by an official who is not over him. As for all this that has been done, it is they who have done it. May the responsibility for all that they have done fall upon their heads, while I am consecrated and exempted forever."
We know that about 25 to 30 people were actually charged with crimes, at least that many. There could be more because at one point in the text it just says, "and the wives." So who knows how many wives they had, maybe 50, 60 people were involved all in all, and we know exactly who they were and what they did. For example,
"The great criminal Pybecamen, who was then chief of the chamber, He was brought in because he has been in collusion with Ta and the women of the harem. He had made common cause with them. He had begun to bring out their words to their mothers and brothers who were saying, "Stir up the people, incite enmity in order to make rebellion against their lord."
There were 3 types of punishment dished out at the trial. For most people, it simply says, and I'm going to have to pick up my notes because this is like take 12, I can't get this line off. They caused their punishment to overtake them, their crimes seized them. Finally, you could say the line. That is probably a reference to burning alive. That was the common punishment in the Egyptian New Kingdom for rebels, and a really grisly way to die. 4 were allowed to take their own life, and these were probably royal favorites, perhaps members of the royal family. This was the punishment dished out to Pentawere, the rebellious son. What's incredible is that the transcript says they did it right there and then in the court. Guilty, here's your cup of poison, dead. No chance for appeal. This was a different judicial system to the one we have now, that's for sure. And 4 people who were involved in a minor way got off with their noses and ears being cut off. Still a horrible punishment, but considering the alternative was immediate death or being burnt alive, they probably considered themselves pretty lucky. What's absolutely incredible is that 3 of the 12 judges themselves were accused of crimes. 1 took their own life, 1 had their nose and ears cut off, and Hori, the standard bearer that I mentioned earlier, he just got off with, the punishment says, scolded sternly with bad words. And that was the last punishment that was described, so perhaps he had seen the whole trial, the mutilations, the executions, and he gets off with a stern warning. That was Hori's lucky day, my God. Can you imagine the courtroom drama though? HBO, I hope you're taking notes. The deaths, the punishments, the judges themselves being accused. That's a courtroom drama, Tom Selleck. None of this blue bloods nonsense. So what happened to Pentawere after his death? It was, of course, the usual practice for rich Egyptians to be mummified, but would that apply to such an outrageous traitor? Well, Egyptologists have long known about this mummy called Unknown Man E. He was found in the same cache of mummies as Ramses III, but this was a really unique mummification. It didn't say who it was. It was wrapped in a goatskin rather than the usual linen, which for the Egyptians, the goatskin was ritually impure. It didn't have its internal organs removed and placed in canopic jars, and it has this haunting, screaming look on his face. It's really puzzled Egyptologists for a long time exactly who this mummy was. Modern science comes to the rescue again. They did a DNA test on this mummy and on Ramses III. They share the exact same haplogroup on the patrilineal line, and they also share 50% of their DNA, which makes it extremely likely he was one of Ramses III's sons. Considering what we know about the death of Ramses III and this trial, it's really likely that this horrible mummy is Pentawere, and that he's been eternally punished for betraying his father. So there you go, that's all I have for you. That's the murder of Ramses III, the aftermath, and poor old Pentawere. Daytime television sucks, and TV really should take a note out of history. Skiddly-doo, haven't said that for a while. See ya!